Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. There are different ways to think about retirement and to do retirement. Listen in today for the second part of my discussion with retirement expert Jill Weeks. It's full of ideas and inspiration and things to avoid when thinking about retirement. Let's go to the second part now.
He had, a severe, optical issue, and it meant that he couldn't really read board papers and all that sort of thing. So he was quite happy in terms of going off to do. He adjusted very, very well. So his transition to retirement was very well. And there were single people. There was married people, of course, but they all had different issues in terms of why they retired, whether it's health, selling a business, death of a spouse, moving. There was all different reasons as to why people retired. And I think one man who was so happy about retiring, he was a town planner, I think. He said that retirement is better than button-up boots.
Oh, okay.
So, there's so many different people, but, a lot of them who wanted to keep on keeping on in the work field certainly did that, through networks. That was the main thing that they kept up to date with.
So, yes, on one side, networks to keep yourself active and aware of opportunities, and on the other side to deal to and ensure you have financials, probably a fairly significant motivator, but also that purpose thing, that identity thing, that even again, socializing and being part of a cause. It might not even need to be a business. It might be some more vocational thing. But there seems like there are many, many opportunities. So in that book you were referring to just there, what were some of in that case, the people that you were able to learn something completely new because they'd thought about things in a very different way? I mean, there was the dancer who became a Parks and Gardens employee, but were there some radical changes of trajectory?
There were amongst some of the females. The females sort of went on to do, I suppose you'd call it caring work, and possibly they did more volunteer work. Just trying to think of some of the others. One was a marriage counsellor, and so she kept on doing that a little bit. So that was sort of the same.
Yeah.
Some of them sort of went and they moved further out of the capital city, and got their hands dirty basically.
Yeah.
And created plots of vegetables and just sell at markets and that sort of thing as well. So some people did. A couple sort of did I suppose more than a couple did a traditional thing of retiring, then we'll go travelling, then we'll look after grandkids, then we'll renovate the house. Those things. But the feeling, particularly amongst the men, was I'd be back there tomorrow if I didn't have to work the hours or if I didn't have as much responsibility, because I think that sometimes we undervalue the value of work because it not only gives you income, it gives you activity, it gives you structure, time management. socialisation, self-expression too, and plus the sense of status. So there's a lot of different things that happen. But, you do find people who, you've only ever met them in a suit and tie, and then you sort of see them, a few months into retirement, and they've got the board shorts on and, having a great time. And that, I suppose, talking about the maybe surfing or whatever, there's more of a trend, I think, to become a barefoot executive. You can still just go into work maybe a couple of days a week, but you might be, living elsewhere and still got that, sort of, if you want to call it, work-life balance.
Yeah, the purpose of work is so powerful. I know there are some who have jobs that aren't that glamorous, and but across the board, engaging in something fulfilling is pretty powerful. And there was interesting that it's more a volume issue by the sounds. If they could, whoever it was that you were referring to there, could cut back the hours and the intensity and the pressure, and back it off from 5 days of 12 hours a day to something more like a few days, that might make a whole lot of sense for people. Because the thing is, there's so much value and IP and experience that can kind of wander off into the distance, and I think there is a lot more focus now on, because businesses are struggling to get employees, so they're opening up to the idea that people of age 50 plus can have an awful lot of experience and don't necessarily want to just retire.
Yeah. I call some of those people OWLs, which stands for older older workers, but working less, still earning. So older workers, just still got their toe in the water, I suppose, and doing a few things. But I think there's going to be a huge problem with the skills and experience drought unless something's done. And if you've had a really hard manual job, you may say, there's no way am I ever going to work again. It's a really, really
understandable
difficult thing. But if you've had, say, maybe an office job, and the idea of doing something different, for example, I knew an IT engineer, and he was very, very good at his job. But then a mate said, look, I need a couple of hands installing garden watering systems for people. That was his business. Would you come and give me a hand? He goes, oh, yeah, tell me what to put in, which pipe goes where, sort of thing. And he actually said, I had to say to him, hey, I said a couple of days, not full time and not in the blazing sun. So, and he said, I never knew that I could actually do that sort of thing. And, coming from strictly working with computers, I suppose there's some change over there to installing watering systems.
Yeah. This is a wonderful thing, is discovering that you have still an awful lot of value and a bit of fire in the belly to do something. Just to put this into a bit of context, we've talked about lots of the things that are possible and why we'd want potential retirees, upcoming retirees, whether they're in business or employment, whatever, to network and think about different ways of doing things so that they can travel and so that they can pursue more of what their passions and spend their time in different ways. But as an additional motivation, what are some of the not the horror stories, but the stories of where retirement hasn't gone well, and do you have any of those that you?
I do. I think sometimes it's obviously an adaptation or a transition if you're a couple, and that can be very, very difficult. I've met people who said, look, it's just ridiculous, both of us retiring at the same time. And in fact, one lady in 21 Ways to Retire said, well, we actually retired 6 months apart. And she said, so we wouldn't have the same deprivation at the same time. So her idea of stopping work was really deprivation rather than sort of moving on to something else. So that's one thing. It's often, and I knew a man in Queensland, for example, who was okay with bowls and golf and all the usual types of things, and he had a very successful business in Melbourne for a number of years before moving up to Queensland, and he just got very bored, and he said, I just used to start the 5 o'clock drink session a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier. And his wife was very, very busy because she was a volunteer in numerous organisations. And then one day he actually saw an ad for a brickies labourer, would you believe, in the local paper. So he said, I'll have a crack at that. So here he was, he's like 70-something, and he was up with the boys at 4 o'clock in the morning to beat the summer sun and helping them out, and he was part of the gang and he was happy, and they were happy again, but they went through quite a patch where he just said, look, it's, I just don't feel like I'm getting intellectually challenged by, like talking with people, socialising. If I go there, and he said it's all the same age group, and he wasn't used to, socialising with the same age group as all. You find people who say, look, it's the worst thing I've ever done. I wish I was back working. I had mates. I had this, I had that as well. So it's something to sort of think about, I suppose, that, that work is just so important. But I remember the author Charles Handy saying once that when he retired, he had no meetings to go to, no appointments, no targets. And he said his diary was empty, and he said bliss. And then he said, hang on a minute. It was like moving out of a sheltered prison to the open world. All of a sudden, like I'm by myself. What am I going to do? So, it's usually I suppose the transition to retirement that's the hardest in the first couple of years. Although sometimes for some people that's the honeymoon period. And I remember reading George Valiant's book, a whole lot of people in America, and he followed them for quite a few years. And he said, if you didn't, particularly for white-collar workers, if you didn't have something to look forward to or something planned after 2 years, their health suffered very, very badly. So, that was something to think about. And in his book, he actually said, look, he interviewed a whole lot of people, and they said, why have you retired? And someone said, well, a painter paints. I'm a painter. I'll keep painting. And someone said, my nest egg wasn't large enough after a couple of divorces, and another one said, I'm in an exciting phase at work, so I want to keep going. So people have different reasons, but I think you really have to start thinking about what are you going to do, and that's when I like to talk about a portfolio lifestyle. There's so much being put into people's financial portfolio, what are you going to invest in, all this sort of thing. But how are you going to plan your time? So I always think that if in a perfect portfolio, as you said, rather than having lopsided leisure or, doing other things, you can have several occupations, which may include part-time work, mentoring. You can have several sources, obviously investment income, that's part of your lifestyle. Several hobbies, some may generate additional income, and perhaps also you'd like to volunteer. And it's not just the usual types of volunteering. I mean, these days I say you can even volunteer in your PJs. There's various organisations who say, look, if you're handy with the computer, we'd love you to do. Maybe it's a database, or maybe it's typing letters, or maybe it's doing something else. And it can be right around the world as well. So that's something. So I think that to think ahead, maybe just have a little look at that, how much time you'd actually spend in a week in your portfolio lifestyle, and what importance will you give to each of those areas?
Yeah, it seems we are flooded with promotion of the financial stuff and healthcare, and it's all pretty glam. But as you've just pointed out, it needs a lot more focus on what do you do to maintain your enthusiasm for life and your vigor, and and taking hold of all the possibilities of travel and doing different things with your time and contributing in different ways. So what we might do, Jill, is spend a bit of time now. Just if I'd like to kind of recap for the listeners on the 3 or 4 steps in the process. So this is, I think we've created the sense that there's a lot of things that are possible, but you're okay if we just go back to the beginning and go, where would you, with all your experience? Before I do that, this is on today's edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio, an in-depth discussion with Jill Weeks on retirement. So, Jill, if you were in front of an audience of 100 people that are kind of starting to think about what's next, where do you start and the process to kind of have a fulfilling and purposeful and successful period in your inverted commas retirement?
Yeah. I think you have to sort of say, why are you retiring? And if you have some control over when you are going to retire, that's obviously very important, because, if you don't have that control, well, then that's another added problem as such. But I think that you have to say, could you retire? Should you retire? Is it in your best interest? That's sort of the teasing questions, I suppose, to pull that out. Why are you retiring? And then people say, what are you going to do? And then they go, I'll do this, this and this. Well, hang on a minute. You've gone to your financial planner or accountant, whoever it might be, and you've set out your financial portfolio. I think you actually have to think about your lifestyle portfolio as well. There's people, I don't know what to work. I'll just wait a while and I'll see what happens. And, I've been working for so long and running a business and doing all sorts of things for so many years. I'm tired. I need a rest. Well, that's fine. But I also think you need to sit down and say, let's start an ideas bank of what you're going to do. Because that's what I said Biddy Naylor did when she married her passion for social work or people and travel together. So what sort of things could you do? Some may generate income, some may not. Start researching educational courses, enroll in one or more subjects if you don't know about something, but start thinking about your passions. And I also think you need to start developing a personal 5-year plan. So what are you going to do in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? And of course, not everything's perfect, of course. So sometimes you have to adjust the sails if a storm comes or there's better wind somewhere else.
Change direction.
I think you have to try and make sure you're around interesting, exciting people. So and different age groups. Going back to that network, you must cultivate your networks. It's really important. It's great to have a work network, but as you get out of a business or get out of an organisation, you may find that those particular networks may not be as strong as they used to be.
No, they more or less stay with the employer. A lot of those relationships, don't they?
Yeah, they certainly do. And I mean, going back to the finances, if I was thinking, well, I might start a profitable hobby, I might be selling something at markets or doing something over the internet. I think I'd go and ask a financial planner or an accountant saying, when is a hobby not a business? Just in case there's some implications there, because you also I would be going to ask them, look, how would my finances be impacted if, I'm going to start up a hobby or a business or put something in. And I think if you're going to do that, the people I think that have done the really good jobs of having another business or profitable hobby in their retirement have started off slowly. They haven't just gone out and bought themselves a job and then think, gosh, I've never done this before. I'll just have to work harder and harder and harder.
Right, for failure.
And see whether you've got some, people will give you some, maybe some work, or maybe if work's not your thing, go and look at some voluntary organisations. And I think it's a group called Volunteering Australia, or there's a title like that. You go on there and they have listed just so many different opportunities, so you don't really have to particularly do one thing. As another example, when I was in Queensland at a seminar, a couple came up to me and they said, look, we've got a unique retirement job. Their kids actually said to them, look, you guys are sitting on the couch all day, not doing much. Mum and Dad, get up.
Cheeky.
Role reversal.
Yeah.
And he was Mr. was a bus driver, and his wife, Mrs. She was a school teacher, and the kids had found them a job. And they were living in Mackay at the time, and they found them a job on one of these remote cattle stations out from Mackay. And they actually wanted a couple. They wanted a handyman and a tutor for their kids. So for 6 months every year, and I think they've just stopped doing it, 6 months every year, they'd go out to the station, get paid for doing that, come back. But they said after the first 6 months, they got a call from someone up saying, well, we'd like to poach you. We'll double the income. Well, so those sort of things, it's serendipity. They weren't really looking for it. The kids found them a job. They loved it. And so I think looking at how you're going to promote your skills and experience is really important.
Yeah, it really probably does start with, and it should start with an understanding of your financial situation, what you need to do to sustain yourself at that most basic level. When it comes to business owners, it's often a lot of their super is their business, or at least they think it is, and so that's something that the work I do is you try to do that early days, well before you're ready to up and sell your business. So I talk about what it might be worth. How can you ensure you can sell the business so you can realise that money, so you can put it in the bank and live off it if it's significant enough. So certainly the financial aspects, whether you're an employee or a business owner, to get a handle on that seems critically important, because it kind of sets a tone, doesn't it? But then the other thing that really struck me there is, I think it's a question of what would you do with your 40 hours a week if you didn't have to work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. What would you do? And I mean, look, you ask some of these business owners, and I'm sure they'll say, look, I don't care. Just having
but
breather.
this.
Yeah. But as some people say, I'm not over the hill, I'm just enjoying the view. So you're just taking a little time out to plan your next adventure, like your encore career, as they say in America. What are you going to be doing in your encore career? And to know that it's not going to have to be 40 hours a week ever again. It could be 10 hours a week doing something else. It could be volunteering. It could be learning a new skill, for example. You might want to, for example, you've had some sort of IT job, but you want to learn wood chopping, or you sort of want to go and dig ditches, or just something totally different that gets you out and about, and that. But do keep up your networks, because you never know what opportunities may come along from that.
Yeah, look, and I think if you go to, not to repeat that, but if you start at that financial point, what do I need? And everyone has different needs, and obviously a different level of wealth, but then from there, imagine you did have time, check in really closely. It's probably a lot of introspection at a personal level about what do I really want to do, which is, it's easy to put off those questions when you're so busy. And it's also, and you mentioned this, that when a couple at a point where they're both thinking about this, and I've seen it post the sale of a business where all of a sudden they're spending a lot more time together than they have in past, and doesn't always go well. And so they're the sorts of things that you need to think about well before, and replacing if there is a gap. If you're financially set, great, but you've still got to do something with your time, and going and playing golf and starting those 5 o'clock drinks a little bit earlier isn't well, it's fun sometimes.
No, I think protecting your your brain. Make sure you've got a healthy mental aspect to it, because the more challenged you are, the more different people you meet, the different skills you pick up. It just really could be the time of your life. Yeah,
and as you said, that's just it's crude to call it networking, but if you hang around with some interesting people, you feed off of that. And if you go out onto a station and drive a bus, you're going to meet a whole lot of really fun people, and some not so fun people. But that's all. It's all part of it. And I remember we did a hike down at Wilson's Prom with my wife, and met the lighthouse keepers out there, and they it's like a week on, week off, or something along those lines. And they had another job, and then this thing. It was it's incredible to talk to them about what they did. Yeah. Jill.
Well, I remember. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I remember one couple I met. He was a fireman, and I think she was a nurse, maybe. And they were doing their lap around Australia, and they stopped at Forest, which is on the Nullarbor Plain, and they ended up getting work there for 3 months or 6 months every year for a long time, because they sort of asked the question, and they said, well, your fireman experience, your other experience, and they said that was just fabulous, because they used to have to cook for all the pilots every night that flew in there. It was a very, very busy airport.
Yeah, I mean, it is rich with opportunity if you're open to it. Jill, it's been a really wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. I just wanted to close out with you telling listeners where they can get a hold of you and which of and just some of the publications. I don't overly plug the specifics, but if you can tell them what they can read and where to go, we'll also include all that in the show notes. So over to you for where people want to, if they wanted to catch up with you.
Yeah, well, the best way, I think, is just to have a look at my website, which is where2now.net. And I put up stories of inspiring people. I put up tips about where to retire in Australia, what to look for. I put up other information of retirement lifestyle information, information about publications, all that sort of thing. So if you go to where2now.net, and it's the number 2, where2now.net, you can find it. I look forward to hearing from people, and I'm always looking for ambassadors. So if you're living in a place that you'd like others to know about, I'm quite happy to chat to you about becoming an ambassador. It's not a paid role, but it's a proud role.
Yeah, excellent. No, we'll love to foster that sort of network of people championing the idea of, far-flung places and interesting places to live, do business, retire, whatever it is, and to keep reinforcing that there are different ways to do it, and it's networks, education. Jill, thank you so much for your time today. It has been a really fun, interesting chat, and you do a lot of great work, and power to you.
Thanks so much, Michael.
So that is all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources, or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.